The Galactic Empire arrived unannounced, its vast fleet blotting out the stars above Earth's hemisphere. Their ships were unlike anything seen before, sleek, obsidian monoliths that hovered effortlessly, humming with a faint, otherworldly resonance. When the ultimatum came, it was translated into every language on Earth simultaneously: submit or face annihilation. Captain Logan Harris stood at the observation deck of the Midwest Defense Command, his jaw clenched as he surveyed the chaos unfolding on the large screens before him. Cities across the globe were gripped with panic. Leaders scrambled to negotiate, but the Empire's emissaries had made it clear that there would be no discussion, only obedience or extinction. "They're testing us," Harris said, his gravelly voice cutting through the tense silence of the room. "They want to see if we're worth the trouble." His words hung heavy, a challenge no one wanted to answer. Sergeant Tyler Rodriguez leaned against a console, his fingers tapping nervously on a tablet. Despite his youth, his sharp eyes betrayed a mind already racing ahead. "Captain, I've been analyzing the footage from their initial strike. Every missile we sent just evaporated before impact. It's like their ships have an energy field that cancels out high-velocity threats. Energy field or magic, it doesn't matter if we can't touch them," muttered Lieutenant Marcus Caldwell, his arms crossed. A former Navy pilot, Caldwell's frustration was palpable. The thought of his fleet rendered powerless by this alien technology gnawed at his pride. "We're not fighting with sticks and stones here. We've got nukes. Hell, we've got railguns." And they still didn't flinch. "Maybe we're just not asking the right questions," said Dr. Arthur Reynolds, his calm demeanor contrasting sharply with the room's tension. Reynolds was a physicist with a reputation for cutting through impossibilities, though his presence in a military facility had raised more than a few eyebrows. Now his role seemed clearer: to think where others refused to. Harris exhaled sharply, his gaze fixed on the largest screen, which displayed an alien mothership hovering ominously over New York. "All right, let's keep it simple. We need to figure out what they're afraid of fast." Hours later, the first counterattack was launched. Across the globe, coordinated missile strikes targeted the fleet. The sky lit up with streaks of fire, human ingenuity on full display. Yet as each projectile neared its target, the alien ships responded with almost dismissive precision. Missiles detonated harmlessly in midair. Railgun slugs ricocheted as if the ships were wrapped in an invisible cocoon. When Earth's most powerful warhead struck, the resulting explosions left no mark, as though the ships were immune to heat and pressure alike. At the Midwest base, the team watched the debacle unfold in grim silence. Harris slammed his fist onto a console. "Damn it! They're untouchable." His voice echoed in the cavernous room. Rodriguez hesitated before speaking, his tone tentative but determined. "Captain, I've been running simulations based on the energy readings we're picking up from their ships. Their defenses aren't invincible. Not completely, anyway." "Not invincible?" Caldwell turned sharply, his skepticism evident. "Did you miss the part where nothing works?" Rodriguez straightened. "Their energy field seems tuned to neutralize high-energy impacts, but the data suggests it's less effective against slower, more focused forces. Think of it like a bulletproof vest. It'll stop a bullet, but a knife can still slip through." Harris turned to Reynolds, who had been listening intently. "Doc, does that hold up?" Reynolds nodded slowly, his brow furrowed in thought. "It's plausible. If their armor is designed to diffuse energy, overwhelming it with kinetic force at the right frequency might bypass their defenses. But theory means nothing without testing." "Testing?" Caldwell scoffed. "In case you haven't noticed, we don't exactly have spare alien ships lying around." "We don't need their ships," Rodriguez shot back, his confidence growing. "We need something they don't expect." Harris rubbed his temples, his mind racing. "We've got an anti-aircraft arsenal in storage. Old-school hardware. Can you retrofit it?" Rodriguez grinned. "With some tweaks, I can make it sing." The first chance to test their theory came sooner than expected. One of the alien vessels broke formation, descending over a military base in Arizona. It was a show of force, its humming presence a clear warning to Earth's defenders. The Pentagon, desperate for results, approved Harris's proposal to use the modified anti-aircraft guns. As the alien ship loomed overhead, Harris and his team coordinated from the Midwest base. Rodriguez monitored the targeting systems, his fingers flying over the controls. Reynolds recalibrated frequencies in real time, his calculations scrawled across a screen. Caldwell directed the operators on site, his voice steady despite the stakes. Firing in 3, 2, 1, Harris commanded. The guns roared to life, their retrofitted shells arcing toward the alien vessel. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, the ship's shimmering energy field flickered, a ripple spreading across its surface. The team held their breath as the alien craft shuddered, its smooth descent interrupted by violent lurches. "Direct hit," Rodriguez shouted. "Keep the pressure on." The alien ship attempted to retreat, its sleek hull now marred by visible dents. Another volley struck, and with a deafening crack, the craft spiraled out of control, crashing into the desert floor. The room erupted in cheers, but Harris raised a hand for silence. "This isn't over," he said, his voice steady but tinged with urgency. "We've shown them we can fight back, but now they'll adapt. We've got to stay one step ahead." As the team regrouped, the enormity of their task loomed large. They had won a single skirmish, but the war was far from over. Harris glanced at the faces around him. Rodriguez's youthful determination, Caldwell's grudging respect, Reynolds's quiet confidence. They were far from perfect, but they were Earth's best chance. "We've got a lot of work to do," Harris said, his eyes blazing with resolve. "Let's get to it." The crash of the alien vessel in Arizona sent shockwaves around the world, both literal and figurative. Footage of the once indestructible ship lying in pieces was broadcast across every major network. For the first time since the Galactic Empire's arrival, humanity felt a flicker of hope. At the Midwest Defense Command, that hope quickly turned into determination. Tyler Rodriguez hunched over his workstation, surrounded by wires and dismantled components. The glow of his monitor lit his intense expression as he analyzed data from the Arizona strike. The room buzzed with activity, but Rodriguez barely noticed, lost in thought as he searched for patterns, weaknesses, anything to give Earth an edge. "This isn't about hitting them hard," he muttered. "It's about precision. We need to get under their skin." "Care to share with the class, Sergeant?" Captain Logan Harris asked from the doorway, his sharp gaze studying the younger man. Rodriguez glanced up. "Oh, Captain, I was just thinking. The impacts worked, but they were messy. If the Empire's adapting, we need something smarter." "Agreed," Harris said. "What do you need?" "Time, resources, and maybe a miracle." Harris chuckled. "The first two, I can manage. Miracles? That's your department." Across the base, Lieutenant Marcus Caldwell argued with Dr. Arthur Reynolds. A map of Earth's defenses lay between them, marked with red pins for alien sightings and blue for human installations. "We're wasting time defending static positions," Caldwell said. "The aliens can hit us anywhere. We need mobility, hit-and-run tactics like naval warfare. And when we run out of places to hide," Reynolds countered, "if we can't neutralize their shields, no amount of maneuvering will save us." "Gentlemen," Harris interrupted, entering the room, "let's focus. Rodriguez is refining the weapons. What do we need from your end?" Caldwell straightened. "I'm building a decentralized command structure. If one base falls, the others can keep fighting." Reynolds nodded. "Good. I'm analyzing the Arizona wreckage. The energy field collapsed under sustained kinetic impacts. We just need the right frequency to replicate it." "Share your findings with Rodriguez," Harris said. "We're running out of time." The team's efforts were tested when a new wave of alien ships descended over Europe, targeting key military installations. Reports of devastation poured in, and Harris's team was tasked with deploying modified anti-aircraft guns at a NATO base in Germany. Tension ran high as Rodriguez recalibrated targeting systems in real time. Caldwell barked orders to ground teams, his voice steady. Reynolds monitored alien energy readings for weaknesses. When the alien fleet arrived, the shimmering energy fields deflected missiles and railgun slugs with chilling efficiency. "Hold steady," Harris commanded. "Wait for Rodriguez's signal." "Almost there," Rodriguez muttered. "Got it. Fire now." The modified guns roared to life, their retrofitted shells streaking toward the alien ships. This time, the impacts were devastating. A lead ship's energy field flickered and collapsed before a second volley sent it crashing to the ground. "Direct hit," Caldwell shouted. The remaining ships began retreating, but Reynolds's voice cut through the cheers. "Wait, something's wrong. The energy readings, they're fluctuating," Reynolds said. "They're adapting." The alien ships re-engaged with erratic movements, deflecting the modified shells. The guns struggled to lock on, and the payloads failed to penetrate the reconfigured energy fields. "Damn it," Rodriguez cursed. "They've already compensated for our frequency." "Pull back," Harris ordered. "We can't lose those guns." The team withdrew, the victory bittersweet. They had proven the aliens weren't invincible, but the Empire's ability to adapt was formidable. Back at the base, Harris addressed the team in the briefing room. "Today, we learned two things. 1, we can hurt them. 2, they're faster learners than we thought. This war won't be about attrition. It'll be about innovation." Rodriguez's voice was tinged with frustration but determination. "We're close, Captain. I know it. If we can figure out how to keep them from adapting." "We will," Harris said firmly, "because failure isn't an option. Not for us. Not for Earth." The team dispersed, returning to their work with renewed focus. The Empire had underestimated humanity once. They wouldn't make that mistake again. The Empire's flagship arrived without ceremony, an imposing dreadnought that dwarfed every other vessel in their fleet. Its hull shimmered like liquid obsidian, reflecting the pale light of the moon. Even from the surface, it was visible, a dark scar across the heavens. The message was clear. This was the Empire's final warning. Earth's resistance had drawn blood, and now retribution was at hand. At the Midwest Defense Command, the team stood in tense silence as images of the dreadnought filled their screens. Captain Logan Harris broke the stillness, his voice sharp and commanding. "We got one shot at this. If that thing fires, it won't be a city they're targeting. It'll be the planet." Sergeant Tyler Rodriguez was already at his station, his hands a blur of motion. His latest designs for the anti-aircraft shells lay scattered across his workstation, blueprints scrawled with frantic revisions. "I've been working on something," he said, not looking up. "The Arizona and Germany strikes taught us a lot. I think I can create a cascading disruption, something that forces their shields into overload." "How fast?" Harris asked, leaning over the table. Rodriguez shook his head. "Fast enough if we get the timing right. But there's a problem. We'll need a delivery system big enough to handle the output. The regular guns won't cut it." Lieutenant Marcus Caldwell stepped forward, his jaw tight. "We've got one system that might work, the Rockies installation. It's designed to handle ICBMs, but with some modifications. It could launch Rodriguez's payload." Harris frowned. "You're talking about the Continental Defense Array. That's untested." "It's our only option," Caldwell replied. "If we don't use it, we're dead anyway." Dr. Arthur Reynolds spoke next, his calm voice carrying an edge of urgency. "If the Rockies array can handle the payload, we'll need to lure the dreadnought into range. They won't come down unless they think we're vulnerable." Harris's eyes narrowed. "A trap." "Exactly," Reynolds said. "We make them think they've broken our defenses. Then we hit them with everything we've got." The plan came together quickly, every member of the team working with a sense of controlled desperation. Caldwell coordinated the logistics, ensuring the Rockies installation was operational and the modified payloads delivered. Rodriguez fine-tuned the shells, his hands trembling with exhaustion, but his mind razor-sharp. Reynolds calculated the timing, ensuring that every shot would count. Harris oversaw it all, his voice steady even as the weight of the mission bore down on him. When the time came, the team relocated to the Rockies installation, a sprawling complex buried deep within the mountain range. The air was thin, and the tension palpable as the crew prepared for the operation. Harris stood at the command console, his gaze fixed on the tactical display. "Status report," he barked. "Payloads loaded and primed," Rodriguez replied, his voice steady despite the sweat on his brow. "We're ready to go." "Decoys in position," Caldwell added. "We've set up a dummy base in the Midwest. If the dreadnought scans it, They'll think it's our last line of defense. Reynolds adjusted his glasses, his calculations displayed on a nearby screen. All systems nominal. We're within the projected margin of error. Harris nodded. Good. Let's bring it in. The trap was sprung with a series of calculated transmissions. Fake signals broadcast from the dummy base suggested Earth's forces were regrouping for a final stand. The dreadnought responded, moving into position with the deliberate menace of a predator stalking its prey. The room fell silent as the massive ship came into range. Its presence was overwhelming, even on the tactical display, a vast, impenetrable mass of power and technology. Harris gripped the edge of the console, his knuckles white. Hold, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Hold. The dreadnought's weapons began to power up, its energy reading spiking. It was a moment of unbearable tension, every second stretching into eternity. Then, at the exact moment Reynolds had predicted, Harris gave the order. Fire! The array roared to life, its launch tubes shuddering as they released the modified shells. The projectiles streaked toward the dreadnought, their trajectories precise and unerring. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the first shell struck. The effect was instantaneous. The dreadnought's energy field flickered violently, the disruption cascading through its systems. A second shell hit, then a third, each impact compounding the effect. The ship shuddered, its hull glowing with the heat of overloaded circuits. They're losing control, Rodriguez shouted, his voice filled with equal parts relief and exhilaration. Keep firing, Harris commanded. Don't let up. The array unleashed its full payload, the mountain trembling with the force of its salvo. The dreadnought, once an unassailable symbol of the Empire's might, began to fracture. Its sleek hull split apart, massive chunks breaking away and plummeting toward the Earth. In the control room, the team watched in awe as the ship disintegrated. For a moment, no one spoke. Then, Caldwell let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. We did it, he said, almost in disbelief. Harris allowed himself a small smile, but his eyes remained on the screen. It's not over yet. Give me a status update on the fleet. Reynolds scanned the data, his expression unreadable. They're retreating, he said finally. The flagship was their command center. Without it, they're pulling back. The room erupted in cheers, but Harris raised a hand. This isn't the end, he said, his voice cutting through the noise. The Empire's not gone. They'll regroup, and they'll come back stronger. But now they know we're not an easy target. Rodriguez leaned back in his chair, a weary grin on his face. Not bad for a bunch of underdogs. Caldwell chuckled. They'll think twice before messing with Earth again. Reynolds nodded, his expression thoughtful. We've proven something today. Not just to them, but to ourselves. We can adapt. We can fight. And we can win. Harris looked at each of them in turn, his gaze steady. We've got a lot of work ahead of us, he said. But for now, let's take a moment. We earned it. As the team stood together, the remains of the dreadnought burned in the atmosphere above, a fiery testament to humanity's resilience. The battle was over, but the war had only just begun.